Good morning. My name is Ann Ariano, and I serve as the Vice President Administration on your DuPage UU Church Board of Trustees. We want to welcome everyone this morning to our open and inclusive virtual community. As Unitarian Universalists, we hold that there are many spiritual paths to truth and meaning, and pledge to support one another as we explore these paths. We are so glad that you are able to find us and join us for our live stream service today. Please check the church website at www.dupageuchurch.org for updates. If you search under DuPage UU Church on Facebook, you will also find another number of ways to be in community with us as well. We also would love for you to join us today at noon for Science Sunday. Join with our YouTube link that appears on the church website homepage, the same link used to join this service. Next Sunday, we will again have our Zoom coffee hour. That Zoom link can be found on the Members tab of our website and in the weekly church email. We have one more announcement today. The PADS Task Force is collecting specific needed items to deliver to DuPage PADS today. January 17th, from noon to 4, here at DuPage UU Church, outside the front door, you can contribute your items. See the weekly update for the list of needed items, or if you can't get out, there is a link to donate items online. Thank you so much for your support.
Good morning. I am Caroline Bailey, a worship associate and member of this church. Our opening words are from the Navajo. Beauty is before me and beauty behind me. Above me and below me hovers the beautiful. I am surrounded by it. I am immersed in it. In my youth, I am aware of it, and in my old age, I shall walk quietly the beautiful trail. In beauty, it is begun. In beauty, it is ended.
We light this chalice for the acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations.
Please join us in the spoken affirmation of this congregation, followed by the sung affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace,
to seek the truth in love,
and to help one another.
From all who dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and faith arise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung, through every land, by every tongue.
It is time to gather. Each month in our religious education program for youth, we are dedicated one session to a different aspect of anti-racism. And with our theme guiding us toward which aspect to focus on, when it comes to imagination, we focus on imagining a better world. And who better to celebrate than Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? Dr. King's words in his I Have a Dream speech can be revisited through the lens of today's environment with even more impact. White UUs were not very aware of racism in the last decade, yet now white UUs are working on understanding that racism is still here, deep in our society. Today, more white UUs realize that they need to imagine a better world. We need to work hard to end racism. And our faith has taken up this work and called on UUs to build a world without racism. So what's one of the ways our faith guides us into becoming a people of imagination? It says, imagine and work for a better world. Today, I have a pandemic story. Somewhere in the world, there was a child and their grandparent sheltering in place, just like you are now. And they were really fed up, perhaps a bit like you are. The novelty of being at home all the time and doing whatever they wanted had worn off for the child, and they felt bored. For the grandparent, it was less a feeling of boredom weighing them down, but rather a sense of hopelessness. They watched TV for hours, though how many hours remained a mystery. They had stopped keeping track of time, really. The days all blurred together. They felt they had been doing this for so long. And then one day, when the child accidentally sat on the remote after getting more snacks, and the TV accidentally turned off, there was something new reflecting in the black screen of the powered down TV. The child and the grandparent turned around to look out the front window and find the source of this reflection. In the house across the road from them, there was a piece of paper taped in the window, and on that paper was a colorfully drawn rainbow. Well, this was something new, something unexpected and bright and cheery and new, and the child and the grandparent turned to one another knowingly, grinning. In a flash, the child retrieved a sheet of paper and crayons and began to draw a rainbow while the grandparent fetched tape. A moment later, they gazed upon their window with pride. Their rainbow shone back across the street, joyfully mirroring their neighbor's window. What happened next was like magic. Every day, more cheerful rainbows appeared in more windows, all up and down the street. The child and their grandparent gleefully drew rainbows for each window in their home, watching their neighbors do the same. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, and all manner of other colors burst forth, seeming to shine through the windows, a cacophony of color. But the people didn't stop there. They continued to draw, Rainbows were taped to neighbors' doors, slipped into mailboxes. They were sent, they were sent to care homes, to beloved elders who couldn't have visitors. Rainbows were left tucked under the windshield wipers of the Uber Eats drivers' cars, and they were left out for the delivery folk. People made rainbows to send to hospitals, scrawled with messages of gratitude and admiration for everyone working to help the sick, from the doctors, the nurses, to custodial staff and maintenance workers. Stockers working hard in grocery stores found paper rainbows between cans of beans and corn, left waiting on the shelves where the toilet paper was sold out. Now families, on solitary walks around the city, go rainbow hunting. The child and their grandfather like to do this, taking paper with them to write down all the places to see rainbows hanging. The empty school, the corner store, windows of brownstone homes, even hanging from balconies 15 stories up. They make a list of all the rainbows emerging, logging each place where the colors shine into empty streets. By now, you've probably figured out that this story is really happening all over the world, right now. Folks are coming together in spirit while physically distanced to lovingly reassure one another with brilliant colors. The rainbows are beautiful, and to see them alone is a joy, but they carry with them a promise. The rainbows shine as a reminder of hope. We are in this together. The storm will end, and we will come out on the other side. And this shows how much, if you just do one little thing, you can make a difference in your community. Please join us in singing hymn number 298, Wake Now My Senses.
Wake now my senses and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in awe.
Good morning. I am Tom Chalkley, and I am a journeyman haiku poet. In keeping with that love of haiku poetry, I'd like to share this reading. It's excerpted from a much longer written essay entitled On Reading Basho with My 10-Year-Old by Marie Mutsuki Mockett. Miss Mockett writes, by late February of this year, the virus had made me sufficiently nervous that I began packing to go to San Francisco. I wanted to go to my family home on the coast of California where I had grown up. I wanted to go to the home, and it was on the coast. It was isolated, and my parents had always kept a pantry stuffed with goods, plenty of toilet paper, and 2 freezers filled with food in the garage. As soon as my son and I arrived, I began to prepare the garden, planting the seeds my mother had left in the pantry. Then I turned my attention to homeschooling. I had been teaching my own class of students over Zoom. In the week that preceded, we were reading poems by the Japanese haiku master Basho. I decided to start homeschooling my son with Basho. Here is Basho's second poem. The moon, a sign, this way, sir, to enter, a traveler's inn. I see a hotel, my son Yuen cried, like the kind we used to stay in Japan, with a huge white lantern outside, and the moon looks like one of those lanterns. We read another of Basho's haiku. The old woman, a cherry tree blooming in old age, is something to remember. I see Grandma, he said, referring to my mother. She's sitting under the tree, and she is old, and the tree is old, but you can see where she was young, peeking through when she smiles. Like flowers on an old tree, they're the same. One by one, we went through the haiku on the first page. And then I asked him to write one. I told him that unlike new math, you did not have to have an exact answer. Forget about syllables. He scribbled down, the virus spreads. Deaths increase. The earth is in danger. Yes, it is, I thought. All poetry requires interpretation, but it is a characteristic of Basho's haiku that the reader plays a role in fully constructing the poem. It's as though Basho has, it's as though Basho has left out a step somewhere in a math equation. You must make the mental effort to do that step for the answer to reveal itself. This kind of cooperative art feels relevant right now, in a time when we are all staying home as much for ourselves as for each other. While Basho is respected in the West for his sense of play and his concise images and his singular imagination, he himself most valued his ability to write poems that engaged the reader to think actively about the verbal images to see what Basho had described. He valued most his ability to share a creative space. Mockett continues, homeschooling has brought out repressed desire to insist on precision from my son, just as it was once squeezed from me. I'm trying to use haiku as a chance to explore beauty, wonder, and play, something beyond the search for one perfect answer. Yuen, haiku number 6. Gloves are necessary. Hard masks. We are still under threat. In 1635, the ruling lord closed Japan's borders to the rest of the world in an effort to keep out as many foreign influences as possible. Basho was born in 1644, and while historians like to point out that Japan was not entirely isolated from the West during this period of history, it was closed enough during Basho's lifetime that his aesthetics are often admired as purely Japanese. Basho, Haiku 36. Inside the temple, visitors cannot know. Cherries are blooming. Miss Mockett reflects on her associations with cherry blossoms. This is also interesting to consider at this moment, since I, who have for decades gone to Japan at least twice a year, now cannot go at all. Japan has closed its borders to foreigners. Before this, in early February, I had joked to my friends in Japan that this would be a good year to see cherry blossoms. For once, the most popular sites would not be overrun by tourists. Evan, poem number 7. Darkness takes the land, but the sky is left out. Imagine that you woke up in January 2010 and discovered that you had to retire. You were 70 years old, and the Great Recession had put you out of work. Now what? Well, that was me. So I hired a life coach, and we did all the right things. She gave me a battery of surveys to help clarify the options that might appeal to me. We began building a business plan, and she got me in contact with a couple of retirees who had started small part-time businesses on their own. But in my spare time, very often a good 8 hours, I created photo haiku collages such as the one you just saw. My interest in haiku goes way back, some 60-plus years, to 1958, when I was in my senior year in high school. My high school was in a small farm town in central Illinois. I bought and fell in love with Jack Kerouac's autobiographical novel, Dharma Bums. I was going to go to college and become a beatnik intellectual. It would be a bohemian lifestyle for me. So I read Alan Watts on Zen Buddhism. I read Kerouac, Gary Snyder, Allen Ginsberg. And periodically, throughout my life, I wrote really deep and meaningful haiku like Kerouac's. I knew all I needed to know about haiku. They were 3 lines long, 5 syllables in line 1, 7 syllables in line 2, 5 in line 3, which is really to say, I wrote doggerel in bastardized Japanese-style form. But in 2010, I had real time to study and a keen interest to learn more about writing haiku. I hunted the internet for local college programs that might give me a better understanding of haiku. There were none. I hunted the Chicago area for haiku groups. Didn't find any. But I did run across the Haiku Society of America, and their Midwest coordinator lived in the north side of Chicago. 3 times a year, she gave critique sessions for haiku poets who wanted to publish their poems. It was the doorway into my addiction, learning the craft of English language haiku poetry. The operative term here is the word craft. No one teaches you how to become a haiku poet. And after mixing with other haiku writers in the suburbs of Chicago and meeting skillful haiku poets in workshops in Wisconsin, I finally came to 2 conclusions. First, I became clear about my goal with the craft. I want to put my thumbprint on the 400-year-long wall of haiku poets. Sometime in the middle 1600s, Matsuo Kinsaku took the stage name Basho, just like any Hollywood star would. Basho recognized the power and subtlety of 17 syllables and became the father of haiku. But haiku as a separate form of Japanese poetry did not die with him. Instead, it became a major vehicle for every generation of Japanese poets since the 1600s. English language haiku in the last 100 years has spread from England all across Europe, South Africa, India, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, America. Thus, I want to leave my small thumbprint on that long wall of tradition. Second, I realized that to a large extent I would have to learn the craft on my own. I used the medieval apprenticeship model. As an apprentice, I had to start reading and studying a stack of how-to books from established haiku masters and experts. I attended critique sessions of the Haiku Society's Midwest coordinator. I attended the Cradle of Haiku workshops in Mineral Point, Wisconsin, almost every summer. I was absorbed in self-education. Altogether, I spent about 4 years before I thought I was competent enough to see myself as a journeyman haiku poet, and I've been a journeyman haiku poet for the last 6 years. I mentioned hiring a life coach. It was the best investment I made in 2010. By the end of that year, I realized it wasn't work that I wanted. It was the zest of doing something really interesting, and in my case, that was writing haiku. To capture a haiku moment, you have to pay close attention to the fleeting and ephemeral. Take, for example, Canada geese. Have you ever watched them as they descend out of the sky? I see them every autumn and every spring landing out behind our house. I'm fascinated by them. I watch a migrating V of geese swing around into the wind and start their landing. And as they get about treetop height, they begin flapping their wings against the forward motion. And then in the last few seconds, they shape their wings into a parafoil and hold them stiffly to use the air to slow them down even further. And by the time, at that time, their legs swing forward, and in the blink of an eye, they land. I think it's just gorgeous to watch. I've spent 10 years trying to find the right words to show such moments. Here's my haiku for that moment. Canada goose, the snowflake soft touchdown, arriving home.
Once a month, the offering of this congregation is a special collection for an organization nominated by members which reflects Unitarian Universalist values. This month, the recipient is the Unitarian Universalist Prison Ministry of Illinois. If you are using our online donation portal, Venmo, you may indicate special collection. If you are sending in a check the old-fashioned way, please remember to write special collection UUPMI in the memo line. In the words of the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., whose birthday we celebrate this upcoming week, we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Good morning. I'm the Reverend Allison Farnham. I'm the Director and Minister of the Unitarian Universalist Prison Ministry of Illinois. It truly is a privilege to be with you here this morning, and I wanted to tell you that the generosity that you offer today will have a real impact on the work we do at what we all call UUPMI. One of the ways that we as Unitarian Universalists make our love real in the world is through generosity. And your financial commitment today helps enliven our work for Unitarian Universalists who are incarcerated in prisons and jails in Illinois. And of course, our work extends well beyond those who are Unitarian Universalist. Because of your giving, we can respond quickly to mutual aid needs that come up. Like in the past with COVID-19, we were able to give money to our Inside Unitarian Universalists Inside Pen Pals so that they could buy hygiene items, purchase food and calling cards so they could connect with loved ones. Your generosity today empowers our work in education so that we can continue to talk about the prison industrial complex, abolition, and connecting the movements of Black uprisings to the work we do at UUPMI and beyond. Your generosity equips us to be present and engage in congregational work, and allowing you to make your mission real in the world. We offer a work of advocacy that has an impact, and all of that advocacy work is, of course, completely centered around the voices who are on the front lines of that, informed by community partners across Illinois, many of whom are Black-led. Your offering today helps us form new circles and congregations, solidarity circles, that are ready to welcome the newly released in their communities during the very vulnerable time that's called reentry. It is my prayer that the money you offer today amplifies the voices of those who are incarcerated, and also sends a message to our Unitarian Universalists of Illinois who are incarcerated, that they know they are not alone and that they are not outside the circle of love. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. We are so grateful for anything you can give.
So far, this talk has been about Tom Chalkley, his passion for haiku and his retirement. But now, let's just give him a polite pat on the back and let him dodder off to his pen and paper and his computer. At least we know that he will not get into mischief. If he finds a good photo of Canada geese, he will waft off into a poetic state of mind. So let's turn our attention away from Tom Chalkley and move to the more philosophical and psychological portion of this Sunday morning talk. I'd like to talk about the search for meaning, making good use of one's talents, and why I remain a member of this church. Chalkley is certainly not the only person who happened to find an avocation that he finds meaningful. All of us have that ability. It's built into being human. We humans seem to require that life and living have a meaning. And if life seems arbitrary or boring, humdrum or routine, seems like the same old, then we will seek to figure out the bigger picture in life. Surely there must be something one is here to do. God must have a plan if one can just see why she put him or her on this planet. One can read the great spiritual scriptures of the Old and New Testament, or the Upanishads, the Mahabharata, Buddhist sutras. One can go to a Taoist priest and throw the divination sticks and have the priest tell you what you should be expecting in the future. One can go into a sweat lodge until a vision appears and one knows what the path forward should be. If one is an Aussie Aboriginal, one can go on a walkabout. We believe that surely something in those sources will resonate with our personal life experiences, and we will discern how our lives fit into the grand scheme, how my piece of the blue sky fits into some grand, preordained jigsaw puzzle. You may detect by now that I have a somewhat jaundiced view, a slightly cynical distrust that my life must fit a grand plan. But we can flip that on its head. Not what part of the grand plan should I fit, but rather, how can my life be improved if I understand how others have lived their lives to the fullest? Well, now that's a breath of freedom and fresh air. I'm reminded here of one of my guru's favorite sayings. It's so simple to be happy, but so difficult to be simple. That's why I find myself drawn to positive psychology. Positive psychology is the study of positive subjective experience, positive individual traits, and positive institutions that promise to improve the quality of life. Positive psychology focuses on both individual and societal well-being. It's a field of study that has been growing steadily throughout the years as individuals and researchers look for a common ground on better well-being. There are a couple of concepts in positive psychology that I love. One of those is the concept of flow. The first research on that concept was popularized by the University of Chicago psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. He describes the flow state of mind as the holistic sensation that people feel when they act with total involvement. That state of mind is described by the psychologist Catherine Moore as a life in which we use our virtues and strengths for something much larger than we are, where we spend less time worrying about the inauthentic and the mundane. It is where we're not annoyed by the boredom of the too easy and not overwhelmed by the frustration of too challenging. The second concept from Csikszentmihalyi is the term autotelic. Here's the definition. Autotelic people report a greater sense of fulfillment and a greater sense of satisfaction in their lives. They lead a fulfilling life despite low societal status or financial rewards. They apply self-actualization, meaning they have a clear advantage in realizing the development of their talents to the fullest extent. Autotelic people are self-actualizing. They find ways to realize and activate their talents to the fullest degree. That alone gets my excitement flowing. And that brings me to why I remain a member of this church. It is the joy of being in a community of like-minded people. I do not know every member of this church, but over the 8 or so years I have been a member, I've enjoyed the company of people who have a sense of purpose. Not only do they have a sense of purpose, but they are also passionately active in working on those goals as they see them as important for themselves and for the DUUC community at large. I don't want to single out members, but if we're talking about music at DUUC, well, we see singers and musicians in this service alone. But think of the number of people who have formed into choirs and performed extraordinary choral works here. And what about the bands that have given concerts for one purpose or another? Just think about Green Sanctuary, the group here. Not only have they spearheaded educating our community, but they've also produced a statement of conscience to focus our attention on climate change and ecology, and not content with that, they pushed through the idea and application of solar panels for this church. How many of us have participated in PADS over the many years? It's a tradition among the DUUC monthly activities. And for almost 2 decades, do-gooders have given community service to a wide variety of agencies throughout the DuPage area and offered our whole congregation almost monthly opportunities to donate to worthy needs throughout the area. What about the Social Justice Committee? Out of their persistence, their thoughtful recognition of ways to improve the lives of teenagers, they came up with the SMILE Project and gave the whole church an opportunity to be recognized as a UU Breakthrough congregation. Think of the number of groups carrying on religious traditions here: Duckies, Jewish Heritage, the Humanist Discussion Group, and in my view, meditation groups here as well. There are those who the passion is compassion, the Pastoral Ministry Associates, adult enrichment groups, the annual fall retreat, accessibility and inclusion group that improves the access for visitors and members, and the Wider Circle Parent Support Group. And at the core of all of these groups and members, the DUUCers who take on the many administrative roles necessary to keep the congregation moving forward, housed in the church and solvent, many of them on their second, third, or more terms in office. I want to apologize to all the many other DUUC groups I haven't mentioned. I know I left out an equally deserving set of groups. In short, I remain a member of this church because I am surrounded by people passionate about life, passionate about imagining how things can be better, and passionate about contributing their time and talent to worthwhile goals. As a community, we benefit from the gifts given to us by all DUUC members. I mean, who of you would have expected to hear a talk on the joys of goose watching?
Please join us in our closing hymn, number 311 in the gray hymnal, Let It Be a Dance.
Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance
closing words are from the Reverend Michael Schuler. We have reached the end of this time for the gathering of memory and for letting the imagination play with future possibilities. Shall it be concluded then? Or will this adventure now commenced continue? Is this ending to be an ending? Or merely a prelude to new, more glorious beginnings? So be it.